In today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 pedals that you probably didn't know that John Mayer has used before. Now I have to preface all of this by saying that none of these pedals are really key to John's sound. They were never heavily used by him at all, hence why you probably didn't know he's even tried these out in the past. So there's no need to list yours if you have one on reverb with as used by John Mayer in the title for, 200% extra of what it should be listed for, anything like that. That's not the intention of today's video, but just a fun way to highlight some pedals that, again, he's tried out in the past and it's just kind of cool to recognize. So let's get into our list today. Alright, starting off with number 1 here, and by the way, this list is just random in which I selected to go first and last. There's no actual order to these at all. Like number 1 is the probably most commonly known and number 5 is probably the least commonly known. Nothing like that at all. And also, let me know in the comments down below your score out of 5 if you knew them all or if you only knew a couple of them. I'd just be really curious to kind of get an average for this video here. So number 1 is the AHS Legends of Fuzz Supreme. Now this pedal was used by John for the Palladium show, kind of the very first show of the Sob Rock era. Now this fuzz pedal was only used on one board, and it's literally just the Palladium show pedal board here. Now based off of the tones during that show, I'm pretty confident in saying it was never used. And fuzz, in terms of John Mayer's sound, is really interesting. The last time we saw him use a fuzz pedal was the Cornish NG2 during the 2017 World Tour for the Search for Everything album. But that was used for Crossroads really, and before that we saw him use the full tone Octafuzz, the Mark I edition, and that was mainly used for some Hendrix covers. So fuzz has never been a really key component to his sound. The only one again that really makes it important is for Crossroads. That NG2 is key. But other than that, it's not really a pedal he's overly experimented with, but it's kind of cool to see him experiment with the fuzz pedal. But ultimately, before the Sob Rock tour started, he removed that pedal for the actual tour. Moving on to the second pedal on our list here, it's the Chase Bliss Condor. Now this pedal was literally used once by John. During the 2019 World Tour, the second leg, which is the North American leg of the tour, John used the Chase Bliss Condor on his pedal board for the St. Paul show in Minnesota. Literally the only time he used it on a pedal board, and of course just in the context of the show, I've seen no footage of him actually stepping on it and using it, so it's rather difficult to say exactly how it was used. The next pedal on our list is the Exotic X Blender. Now this pedal was first used by John in 2016, kind of for a lot of the performances that John did on TV, like for the Roots Picnic and the show with Alicia Keys. He had an experimental pedal board that featured just some oddball choices in general, and maybe I'll do a video on this pedal board if you guys want, because it's just super interesting as a whole. But the X Blender was used on this pedal board, and it's the first time we saw him use it. Then fast forward to the Palladium show, again that show pre kind of Sob Rock tour kicking off, and John had this pedal also on that pedal board, but like the Supreme Fuzz, it was removed before the tour actually started. Lastly, the X Blender was used in the rack unit that John had for the Dead & Company 2022 shows. So kind of the most commonly used pedal probably on this list by John, and again, the context of him using it is very hard to tell, but a cool pedal that John has been clearly experimenting with over the years. The fourth pedal on our list is a pedal by Cornish. Now when you think of John Mayer and Cornish, the first pedal you probably think of mine is the TES or even the NG2. But John's kind of earlier adoption of Cornish pedals was actually in the form of a duplex SS2 NG2 combo. John used this pedal during the Continuum era as well as into Battle Studies as well. And it was kind of just an extra overdrive that he seemed to be experimenting with in his Bradshaw rack unit. Now this SS2 G2 duplex pedal that John was using did make a couple more appearances, like during, again, that 2016 era, right before the Search for Everything era. John was using it on that really interesting pedal board, as well as we saw this pedal used slightly during the 2017 World Tour as well. So just another overdrive pedal that, again, John's been experimenting with over the years, but I never see anyone discuss it. It's kind of weird. Cornish pedals are absolutely phenomenal and just really, they're crazily good. They're crazily good. And this one, again, 2 different overdrive circuits that John has used, but no one ever talks about. It's just really interesting to me, but maybe that's why. It's because no one really knows that he uses it. All right, now the last pedal on our list here today is the one that I personally find the most interesting. This pedal was used on, again, that really cool, weird pedal board that John had kind of in 2016 before the Search for Everything era kicked off, and used a little bit during the recording of that album as well. And it's the AHS Twin 12 V2. Now, this pedal here is modeled after the 1484 Silvertone amp, and it's essentially that circuit in a box, as Josh Scott has said. And it's just really cool that John would actually use this pedal as a different overdrive flavor. And, you know, I'm just really curious about the sound. This amp is used by a few other guitar players that I'm really into. So the fact that John was experimenting with it, again, it's out of left field kind of for an amp that he would choose to use, but it makes me really curious of what this pedal actually sounds like in the Mayer context especially. But there you guys go. That's the last one on the list. Let me know in the comments down below how many you guys got out of 5. If you knew all 5 of them, if you knew like 2 or 3 out of 5. Again, it should be really cool to try and get an average of what people knew. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. Again, as well, if you want me to make a video on that 2016 kind of era pedal board that I touched on, it was, you know, 3 of the pedals in this video were used on that pedal board. If you guys want me to break that whole thing down and talk about it a lot more, let me know in the comments down below, because that's another video I'd be very interested in making for you guys. As always, thank you so much for the support. We'll see you on the next one.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.